I loved your daughter's dress. I thought she looked so cute. So cute. Yeah. I was worried that like. No, that's what I thought. Yeah, the ones that are like. Yeah, and I just don't get it. I don't. You're like, bring it on.
No, I have a daughter in law
Yeah.
as well, so I'm
Yeah.
like. I think it's gonna be like that now. Nervous. Nervous. Said that she says I'm not sure.
I should be all locked. Money,
All right, we're gonna get started at 11:05.
Okay.
I didn't feel that at first.
I'm still there.
Good to see you.
But honestly.
I'm sitting here next to you.
But it wasn't all.
Hey, Joseph.
How are you? How's your trip?
Pretty good, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah. Do anything fun? Anything enlightening?
Lots of fun. Lots of work, lots of fun.
Did she have fun? Debatable.
Is it called Shorty?
Yeah.
They do have two versions of them, and one is perhaps a.
So that's how it kept 10,000 deposit and
Wow.
All right, you guys ready to hop in here?
We're almost twins today.
Yes, almost. Yeah. I had a feeling. I was like, I wonder if that's.
I'm getting close.
Those are like body hot shorts, they're tight.
All right. Week 3. All right. Any insights, thoughts kind of coming out of week 3 and into week 4?
I was gonna say, I told you that yesterday, but I think it's hard to work in the card writing, but I don't know if that's not what it is, but.
Say that again.
I mean, you told us to do the pie, fill out the chart, so I made a schedule,
Okay.
and the hardest part of the schedule is the card writing, because I can't get that done in 10 minutes. And plus, I don't even know how to write as well, as you guys like, right.
Okay. Anyone else struggling with writing note cards, or anyone have any aha moments when trying to get over the hump of writing note cards?
I think the more, as you get the pattern, you get better at it.
Okay.
But you're probably overthinking the whole thing. Like it's gonna change somebody's world, right?
Okay.
Is one big dead impression.
So you just pick them, when you see them, you write a card, next person on the list, you write a card, you don't plan the. 2 sentences involved.
I just talked to the card store this morning, usually I go to work, store, but there was no individual one. So I went there, blah, blah, blah. Well, and I said, let's file up and then send out.
But will you become known as it, like, that's one of that's real estate card, you know, like.
No, they know, because no one sends them the card. You
Yeah.
get 800 things on your Facebook page.
Yeah.
And nobody sends you
Right.
a birthday card,
Yeah.
except maybe your spouse, right?
Yeah.
So they like getting it.
Birthday cards are like $6. I ain't spending $6 on birthday cards.
$40 store, you can afford $1. Okay? So
How long does it take you to write 2 note cards?
5 minutes.
Okay.
2 of them.
She
And the
doesn't,
rest.
she doesn't know what to do. I don't know what they get, and I told you, I have that return address label and that stamp on the card ready.
I'm like, I write it and then I mess up a word and then I'm like,
I know, me
Yeah.
too.
yeah, I hate my writing. That's
Yeah.
the problem. Yeah.
It looks way better the second time, and so it cost me $2.
Write it on a regular piece of paper.
Yeah, I
or
do that
50.
sometimes, but that is not gonna be done
But you know what you could do is you could go into Word or something and write like something to send somebody a new home, something to send for a
Yeah.
birthday, somebody send for,
That's
and
good.
just have boilerplate things
Yeah.
and just pick them off.
And the address already is really good.
It's what Bryce for. Right? You can't remember, or you can't find it or whatever. And it's eye opening. Sometimes you go to send them something and you find out, look, they moved,
Yeah, that's true.
you know.
Okay.
And I will say, as a recipient of Ellen's cards, they are heart touching, like you always get them and you're like, oh. So, yeah, no, I mean, she's right, the emotion is there, like, it's awesome.
That's cool. I believe. Thank you.
But now we know she only put 2 minutes of
Ah.
thought.
I spent 10 minutes.
Not my card, she didn't.
You
Right?
get letters, right, Mary?
Again, I think this gets into, if you're always thinking, if you're thinking about yourself,
True.
that's when the problem arises,
Yeah,
right? Like,
good.
what are they gonna think about me
Mhm.
by sending this?
That's
When
true.
really, like, Mario's touched, right? Like,
Yeah.
that may not have been Ellen's best card ever, but Mario's touched by the sheer fact,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
she just caught him, right? Like, and it's
Good
about
point.
the
Mhm.
recipient, not about you.
True.
And once you kind of detach yourself from that, then it's like, you know what? What's it hurt to, you know?
I mean, the thing is, this works in your family and your friends' life too.
Mhm.
And this started with me when I was very young, because my father used to write letters to me. He was a big writer.
Mhm.
And he would just write something about something, I don't know, something like, you know, remember when you did, or whatever, you know. And, you know, and he would write, I have every one of those letters. I saved them all. He's been gone 30 years.
True.
And I still have all those letters. And I think it's very powerful, because especially now, you know, people just flip something out on Facebook or something, and that doesn't leave an impression with them. And your client's the same way. I mean, you know, when they get something done that, you know, you've sold them a house and you see it, you know, through Facebook or LinkedIn or any other places you see, and you remember them and write that note, they're your client for life. I mean, they're like, you didn't care enough.
Wow.
So,
I think there's some people, and you're one of them, even on like Facebook, if somebody has, you know, posts something, there's some people that always just say the right thing, and I'm like Googling like what to say when whatever, like it just doesn't come.
Maybe it's practice.
Yeah.
it's practice.
Yeah.
It's practice, yeah.
Kind of going back to week one, other things. So how are y'all doing on gratitudes? Good?
I love them.
You love
Yes,
them? Awesome. Okay,
been writing every day.
okay. What's it, why do you love them?
I do it first thing in the morning now, and it changes my attitude for the day.
Anyone else have any ha-ha moments about the gratitudes? Or affirmations?
I'm still opening up my phone first thing in the morning,
Okay,
I guess.
I have my affirmations written on the mirror in my bathroom, so I have to see them every day.
I love it. Very cool. All right, and kind of going back, week two, we talked about value propositions, Ford, power of flow. Any thoughts on those? Yeah. And again, the beauty of this class, I mean, this is literally like a workbook. I mean, you can kind of, and I think it's in progression. So like I said in the email last week, you know, start with the fundamentals, right? Like don't feel like it's like I gotta now like fire off all these things. And I think that's what the problem a lot of us run into is that we're missing some foundational blocks in our business. And I think that's sometimes what winds up getting us, right? You know, we're so used to doing the way our business the way we've always done it, and then something's introduced new or a bunch of different things, we try doing all these things at once, and you really have to kind of pick them up as habits. And I think really, I do think your morning routine does start you off, because if you don't start with that, like that good juice in the morning, right, I think it's harder to keep up the new things and the things you're trying to do the rest of the day.
It says it later in the book, and it hits it really at for me is the steps are so easy. It's easy to do, but it's also easy to not do. Because you naturally feel though it's insignificant, and you're thinking, it's just a little thing.
Mhm.
And you don't take it seriously, but it's amazing just how easy it is to do, and as long as you just do it, implement, it, just do what it says to do, that it could just, it could change things exponentially.
And then week 3, we talked about the Ninja 9. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, sort of a semi aha moment for me was the flow, really start to understand that, so.
Okay.
Been doing this for quite a while, get a little aggravated when someone does business without me, but when I've spent some re-examination on some of that, and I realized that I might be sending him cards, I might be sending him things, but out of touch with them. And then this guy put on the table about people coming into your lives, new realtors coming into your life, families becoming into your lives. If you're not staying in flow with people, then you're either in or you're out, and there is no in between. And so, just because a realization for me, just because you've done business with people in the past, is no guarantee they'll do business with you in the future. So if you're in flow with them, you're not going to do business, or you know that you will. But that was just something that I realized it was instead of being aggravated and still doing things, I could be doing things, but not connecting with the people at all. And
How long have you been in the business, Mark?
31 years.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, Joe, I think to piggyback on that, one of the big lines that I took away from that was where he was giving the example of the agent that's been in the business for 10 years, but hasn't really been in the business for 10 years. They just had their first year 10 times. And the second
I
thing.
think I've done that actually.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm there with you. And the second thing was that it's never too late to restart flow. And it doesn't matter where you are with your sphere or, your pipeline. It's like, as soon as you incorporate that flow, the transactions will start coming. So that was a pretty big.
To that point about somebody in your family or your relative or your friend's daughter or somebody got into real estate, 95% of them aren't going to be in real estate, for more than a year. So I have a special card I send out for that. I send them a card and I say, welcome to the ride of your life. Real estate works awesome. Blah, blah, blah. I can help you. Please reach out to me. And a lot of times they do. Oh my gosh, what do you do about this? And then you're sort of fostering that. And then when they decide to do something else, which has been my experience, maybe 9 out of 10 times, that person comes back to you with even a better feeling. And then all the people that they were working with. come back to you.
Yeah, but that's because Ellen stayed in flow with those people.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that just because a family member gets in real estate that you're out. I'm talking about getting out of flow and you don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us, and that's for those of you who've studied like Buffini, it's the know you, like to trust you, done a good job for them, and that's what I've always assumed they would come back, and I've had these moments where they haven't come back, and I really found that, and again, this book's kind of brought some insights, a lot of stuff that's not rocket science, but it's just how you align things does make a big difference, and I think flow is one of those things that just. I thought I was in flow, but then when I really read, I'm like, no, definitely not there, right?
A tough realization of.
Yep, exactly. But again, like you guys were saying, we can change it at any time, right? Cool, thank you. All right, you guys ready to dive into this week?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so this week we started on chapter 35, The Power of Pretend. What were your thoughts on this chapter? Any insights into this? Yeah.
I like the Magic Wand script.
Okay.
Jeff taught me that a couple weeks ago, and like every time I've used it while cold calling, it works every time.
Okay.
Like I don't know what it does, but like it just, I don't know, because people get to explain like what they really want versus you like trying to be all salesy and like take it out of them versus you just say, what do you want?
Yeah.
And then just tell it. So
Yeah, Joe, I like the power of pretend, kind of to tell on that. One of the questions I like to ask with prospecting is if you could have it your way, tell me what that would look like. And like you said, they open up a lot more and are able to give you a lot of insight that you would have had to ask a ton of questions to get.
And even, his example of his wife wanting the house on the lake, you know, you could get somebody somewhere where they might not think it's even attainable yet. Just by asking the right questions.
Yeah, and that gets a little into that, when we were in, exactly what to say, there was a lot of those kind of suspend reality type of questions. And this is right along that line of questioning. All right, 36, giving permission. And he tells a great story, the person who bought a new home or who built, talking about finding the perfect home and what that means to a client and giving them permission. That it's okay, that it's nearly impossible finding a perfect home. And even people who build their dream home wind up explaining that this is wrong and that's wrong. And if I did it all over again, I would do this. That dream home sometimes is unattainable. So you just try to find what's that 85 to 90%. Anyone try to do this script with people? Like how do y'all handle when people, trying to find an 8.5 out of 10 and they want a 10?
So I feel like I end up doing that most after home inspections.
Okay.
People are like, oh, it's got a lot of work, or you
Yeah.
got to do this and that. And I'm like, every house is going to have work, right? Even if you buy a new construction home, you're going to have to start doing maintenance and doing things right away. So it's, I feel like I do that a lot more then than on the front end with them. But it's that was kind of my take on the 85% there.
That's a great point. So are there other opportunities in a sale where you have to repitch?
Yeah. Again, I think with a lot of the buyers and our expectations and, kind of all the waiving of contingencies that we've had to do over the past couple of years, I think that's where I run into it the most.
Yeah. I think sellers run into this too. I think the same can hold true for sellers. Especially like you said, sometimes home inspection is one of those. Well, then it gets into if you don't do it for this buyer, you might likely have to do it for the next. We know, the W know better than the W don't, and let's maybe try to work this thing out. I don't know if we're gonna get to this point, another offer that's gonna have nothing on the home inspection, right?
But I'll deal with it now, rather than deal with it again later,
Yeah.
or have to dispose of it.
Yep.
But I think too with buyers, like they'll not move forward on, and I think what our recent market's been like is a prime example. Well, you didn't, I don't want to say settle, but you wouldn't write an offer on that house because maybe the condition wasn't quite what you hoped it would be, or it needed a new kitchen or whatever. So then you move on, and then prices are going up, and suddenly you wish you were back there where you could have gotten that house. You'd already be in, you have the new kitchen, and now you're paying more for less. And because none of us have that crystal ball, you've got to let your clients know what, okay, this is 85% there. We may never find 100,
Yeah.
What are you willing to do?
Joe, I just think maybe in those upper end homes, where qualification and money values don't come into play. But if you go back down to your first time buyers, I mean, they've been hammered in the last number of years with, they can afford a house, or the house they think they can afford, they can't afford anymore. And that needs to be handled in some shape or fashion. And it's like, I'm dealing with one right now, is what they would like to buy and what they're willing to spend, they'll match. And so this is a good narrative, for having that conversation. Although instead of being accusatory and using the wrong words, that you're out of the picture, or you got to change your perspective. Your words matter if you can manage to do them correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So these are good tools that help us to frame things in a way that are not, they can hear them. They can hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
And that's what we're paid for, right? I mean, this is what we're supposed to be good at.
And they talk about like the, you know, faster, cheaper, better, right? Like you can only put two, and then when we were doing that, Jason Pantana was making his, buyer presentation, I believe, talking about like, I guess you can get location, price, or condition. You can get, but you typically have to choose two of the three, right? If you want the price and location, it usually means we're going out to Hagerstown, right? If you can deal with a fixer-upper, right? Maybe we can get that Silver Spring in your budget, right? And that's, or you want, you know, then it becomes price, right? We're gonna have to go up in price, right? Sometimes if you just help people understand, sometimes there's dynamics that are just not necessarily always in their favor, but you just have to make a choice, right? All right, 37, the consultation.
Oh, Joe, can I just say something real quick about that 85%?
Yes, please.
So I actually did use this recently with buyers when we were talking and we were doing sort of the initial buyer consultation. And I used this sort of 85% analogy. And then which they thought was great, and we were using this kind of throughout the process. And when we were looking at a home, we sat down, I said, I want you to write out a list. And I want you to tell me the pros and the cons. And they wrote out all the pros and all the cons. When they did that list, we were sitting at like 75 or 74% for pros. But I took a couple of the things in the con list and I was like, okay, but here's how we can fix those and either remove them from the con list or put them into the pro list. And after we did that, we were sitting well over 85%. And because I had kind of put that out front to them, it was like, oh, we're sitting at now a house that meets all of our criteria for that 85%. So I just thought it was a good kind of way to do it.
I like that. Very cool. All right, 37, ninja consultation. Old methodology, connect, present, close. Ninja consultation is a 4-step. Thoughts on this?
I love this chapter.
Yeah, I like the whole pain and pleasure and the story he tells about the CEO that he met with and, really getting to, instead of just doing his sales pitch, spending some more time listening and asking the right questions. And reading people's body language and,
But what it does, it creates the need. I mean, later in this book, it talks about, when they make their decision, not you make the decision for them, right? And then it's more effective, but like the whole idea of just, finding pain and pleasure, it just brings it out in the open so they can see that, oh, I do have a need and this does make sense. And it makes it easier for them to make a decision.
Yeah.
Rather than get them in a position where they get defensive and say, you know what, I'm gonna think about it.
well, and even the story about the cows and the guy was worried it was too rural.
Yeah.
For his store, and then, had he not been asking the right questions, he never would have gotten to that, that was a deal breaker for their company to be too rural and, then to just think of, well, try a different route back to the airport. And he wouldn't have ever gotten there if he hadn't spent some time listening and asking the right questions.
Yeah.
That CEO would have just gone and built a store somewhere else.
Yeah, and we all come in with our own, as salespeople, our own biases, and we have, and again, if let's say he brought up that objection about the cows, and, all of a sudden I just jumped into pitch, right? Like, without asking a couple more, right? Because I'm like sick of people talking about our cows.
Right.
Right, like, that sometimes happens, right? Like,
Well, so what we love about living here, instead of like, well, let's figure out a solution to this cow problem.
and we're gonna, later on, we dig a really deep, and there's nuances to this that I find were really enlightening as they got a little further, because some of this just, you read it the first time, you're like, it makes sense. I think I probably do 85% of that. But then you hear how he aligns going from, macro to micro, right? General to specific, and the questioning, also asking kind of prior experience first. That you realize that there is a little bit of more method to this than just Spanish Inquisition, asking a ton of questions, right? Like, I'm really good at asking questions, but it's the questions you ask when you ask them that's also very, very critical that we're gonna dig through.
One of those things, the fact that how he mentions how he did all this preparation for the CEO. You know, all the charts and all the data and all the graphs to show him all this information to do his pitch. But he didn't even open it, he just asked questions, and you saw immediately by the body language of the CEO, how he got engaged and just sat back and got relaxed. And we formed that connection.
All right, anything else on the consultation?
I think this notion of time of possession is certainly a new notion that I've never heard of before, and it's really fundamental to any communication.
Right.
And we get that right. We don't have to say anything, really, not in our head there.
Yeah.
It reminds me of parenting, like old fashioned parenting versus more modern parenting, I think of. Like, no one talked to me about every little thing in my life. They just said, this is what you do. And then you're in trouble if you don't do whatever this is. And you get lectured, carrot and stick. And I think modern parenting is so much more listening, because I don't want to hear her point of view. And oh, now I understand. So yeah, I think that this is just really about good communication, right? Period. But it's a good reminder because it's easy just to go into the presentation or at home into my little explaining how she's wrong.
It's a paradigm shift, really. I mean, how do you do a presentation with them? Have it all the time. You got to really think through that.
Yeah.
I mean, so it talks here about having processes. You
Yeah.
have a process, but you better know what to do with it, right? So it's just not deciding I'm gonna have I do things because I'm skilled, but with no process, that doesn't work. But having a process and no meat on the bones, yeah, that's just as bad as well. So this conversation about the cows, you know, I think he's teaching us, you know, how to answer questions, but he had the knowledge and understanding from doing his work to know about the two different roles. I mean, you got to bring all those things together.
Mhm.
In my
Yeah.
view.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is how do you open up their ears that again, I think at some point there is some presentation that we have to show them exactly what we're gonna be doing, but until you know what they're really looking for, or until they're ready to hear you, something that's not gonna really happen, it's gonna fall on deaf ears.
They'd be married.
Yeah.
That's the other one.
Okay, there he's stirred up now, Kobe. Go for it.
Like the exactly what to say about didn't stay, like the person asking the question is the one driving, really, right? So you're giving them time of possession, but to your point on your process does matter. You have to ask the right questions, yeah, right? Yeah.
But also consider your audience too. If you're the younger you are, and it's a total different process than.
When I think through questioning, you find that out, right?
Right.
And what is your, you know, what's your hot buttons?
Right.
What are the things maybe I need to make sure I get presented as opposed to going to my full 45 minutes? Like, okay, did I get it? Right? You lost them. All right, 38. We'll dig into step 1, the connection. I mean, this sounds really like so basic, but I guess it's, you know, there's a little bit of art and science to this. Any questions on that? Any thoughts?
I thought it was interesting that you're supposed to say your name third.
Yeah, me too.
first.
Yeah.
Where most of us,
Doing it wrong.
hi, we're Ryan. You
Yeah,
know, and you
yeah.
get right in there, right?
I
So
agree.
like, that kind of.
That was the big one. I was doing this at open houses this weekend. Trying to say my name last,
Okay.
which is really hard. I'm like, hey, what's up, I'm Mario? Come on in. Like, you know, I don't know. I don't feel that it made a difference in an open house, but it was pretty good. I think the melt the shield part of it was good, right? Because obviously at open house, like especially when you have like an open house and there's a bunch of a busy open house and there's a bunch of people there, you know, you approach people and they're kind of just have their guard up. I don't know where I'm going with that, but, I definitely tried doing the name last and it was weird.
Okay.
Well, you only have a couple seconds, right?
Yeah.
Before they put that guard up. I think that's their point. They don't want them to put the guard up right before they make that decision about the.
Yeah.
So, that's why you're right.
Yeah, I did use the line, make yourself at home. That was one of his lines here. And I, was telling everybody like, hey, come on and make yourself at home. I'm Mario, which was,
Apparently you gather a lot about the person from the answer, right? Because if they say I'm doing great, or they say I'm not, you could tell if they're optimistic or not optimistic, risk avoider.
Yeah.
So I have to slow down and really listen to the answer.
Ooh, but if you're thinking about what you're gonna say next,
Right.
then you can't ever listen, right?
Yeah.
Like that's and
Yeah.
you need to do more of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the nodding as a way, actually, that's actually something I've actually already been doing. I learned it years ago where when you're in a conversation with somebody, when you can get them nodding with you, you're connected,
I like that
they're
too.
locked in with you.
Yeah.
It actually is true. You can get them nodding with you, then you know they're agreeing with you, and then you're on the right track.
Yeah.
If they're not nodding with you, you gotta work harder to build a rapport and break the ice. And once you break that ice or not with you, boom, you got them. It's all downhill from there.
I agree.
All right, 39, step 2, information. This is we go from connection to information, start to discover your customer's pain and pleasure. 3 goals: clarity, confidence, and make them comfortable, right? Avoid I need to think about it.
I love the asking the foundational questions, the questions that are easy for them to answer in the beginning.
Yeah.
To get them, I guess, to get them feeling confident making decisions. And once you get them to open, feel confident and comfortable answering questions of what they already know, then the
Yeah, that
complex
prior-
questions tend to be easier to answer.
It's exactly like test taking, because I've made a lot of tests in a couple decades, and they teach you to start with knowledge questions that are not like comparing or analyzing, like very straightforward, not stressful, and then people relax and they do a lot better, and it's very important in a test. I didn't think about it.
It's the same thing as
Yeah.
the polygraph test.
Oh, really?
They ask you the basic questions, not that I've taken them before.
Ah.
But they ask you, I've seen they ask you basic questions first to create a baseline, and then they go from there.
Interesting.
You had to take a poly when you came to this office?
Yeah.
That was just you.
So this is the very subtle but complex nuance, right? And again, you go back to the CEO story, right? Like it was access prior learning, right? How did he make decisions? How did they make decisions in the past? Right? As opposed to coming out like, what do you know about the marketplace? What do you know about the commission lawsuit? Right? Like that is kind of future state, more of things that maybe aren't within there. And then that's when they shut down, right? Because then they don't want to answer those questions because they're not as comfortable with you, and that's a cold start into that. So this is really interesting. Once I started thinking about this, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I screw this up all the time. But I think I'm doing great. I'm like asking questions, asking questions, right? Like,
And even just like talking about, well, what kind of house, even if you're buying or renting, like, what are you living in now? Why does that not work for you? Or what made you choose that house? And to really sort of get them comfortable with, when I listened to this, it was like such an aha, like, wow, we're always forward. And, sometimes like I just met with some clients who are renting their house, and unfortunately though, sometimes then 3 hours later we're just like, they got so comfortable talking about history that it's like, can we ever get these listing docs signed? this is a rental and I'm now like 2.5 hours into this, talking about,
Sick way.
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always ask them why they bought the house. What attracted them to the property.
Yeah.
Even if it's 40 years ago, it doesn't matter. And they'll say something like, it's the only thing we could afford.
Yeah.
We had no money for a first-time home buyer, so I'm gonna make that first-time home buyers. That's emotional.
Yeah.
Maybe when I bring my first-time home buyer here, they're gonna get it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it goes,
Yeah, it's really hard.
4250.
True.
rapport connection goes into the foundational access prior learning questions, and then 3 gets into the diagnostic, the who, what, when, where, why, and how questions. And then 4 solutions or closing questions. And in theory, if you ask the right questions in the right sequences, the solutions, closing questions are very easy because they've come to that conclusion. Okay, chapter 40, Ninja Constellation, step 3, solution. Right, this goes through their timeshare
Oh,
presentation. Anyone ever do a timeshare
Yeah.
presentation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And dreaded it, like pissed, like totally.
And then,
wasted.
just like the wife, it wasn't worth it for that free,
Yeah.
Yeah.
whatever, like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, had they just let me go at no, I would have been fine, but yeah.
Drilling you.
Yeah.
Flat like.
But look, yeah, exactly. But it was very interesting when they did the, you know, sort of role reversal and had the conversation themselves, and suddenly she was ready to buy something.
Yeah.
Just, you know, had they taken a different tack, that was a really interesting chapter, I thought.
Yeah.
Little chauvinist though, because he was like, of course he wasn't gonna let her do that, right?
But then he said that,
Maybe
you
phrase
know,
that
he did
differently.
let her buy the house on the lake, so.
Did he
Yeah.
let her? buy
Yeah.
it?
he let-
Mrs. Larry Kendall.
Yes, exactly.
This is Larry King.
I wrote a contract one time and it was like Mrs. Elmer Smith. Like it was like, that's what you really want me to write into this seller, and they're like, yes.
So
You don't have
funny.
his name?
This is, all right, yep, so it's a good example of, you know, and again, when you walk through this dialogue, it's pretty good. Okay, 41. Step 4 is the proposal.
This is a very interesting one.
Okay, what's that?
Well, identifying, visual thinkers, auditory thinkers,
Oh, yeah.
kinesthetic thinkers, being able to identify people like that, you can, I guess you can find out how effective your presentation can be. Like, for example, if somebody's very, audible, you don't need to show them all these pictures and graphs. You just need to focus on speaking and communicating very clearly with them. Versus someone who's very visual, do less talk and do more showing, and how most people are, like to feel touch, like a whole package.
Yeah, I'm like, I need to put a soft blanket on the table and see who just touches it the whole time.
And also just how, like, when you talk to them, you can identify them by how they respond. Like, if people who are audible, they say, that sounds good.
Yeah.
And people who are,
That looks good,
visual, that
yeah.
looks good. Well,
Yeah.
And roll their eyes up supposedly.
Yeah.
For side to side.
that's so interesting, like how that works.
I know, but I don't think it's as, maybe you're just, I'm not as good at it, but I feel like I didn't even know myself, I took a little
I know,
test.
I was like,
Because I
I'm definitely a kinesthetic, I'm a toucher.
And did you take a look at the test or
No,
whatever?
I just, going through this, I'm like, oh my gosh,
No.
I'm totally like, if I go anywhere, I'm touching,
That's
touching
why you're a
things,
massage therapy.
feeling, exactly,
Yeah.
feeling fabrics, feeling, yeah.
She won't massage you.
No, I'm sorry. Well, maybe I need to start that, you know, I'm gonna set up a room.
Yeah.
It's my real job. I've been a massage therapist.
I'm saying in the office.
Oh.
Built-in clientele.
True, yeah.
I can bring my chair in.
So just starting from the beginning, there's six ways to increase the power of your communication. And again, starting with the first one, and I'll tell you, COVID's changed this for us, and I tell you, we were fighting this one back, is getting face to face your best avenue. And I think he's mentioned it before. We've been able to get away with it during a period of our business, when some of us were still extremely successful and not doing anything face to face. But I gotta tell you, I mean, I think we all kind of realize getting back face to face, or at least voice to voice, is gonna be your best method. Second part was the modalities, so visual, auditory, and aesthetic. Richard was just, we were digging into this one. Tracy's kinesthetic, which is touch. Do you line up with any of these? Is this new to you? Have you thought about this at all?
I know there are former teachers in here.
Mhm.
You're always thinking about this with your classroom. Because you're not dealing with one person. I mean, that was the other thing. If you're dealing with a couple, chances are they're going to be polar opposites. So you need to approach, you need to have different tricks in your bag, so to speak, to engage with.
True. And no one is one of them, really. I mean, we're all more, right? So in teaching, it's always better to have the various ones, not just to reach everyone, but to reach everyone better, right?
Isn't that what Montessori's are about? Like, I remember the
Yeah.
letters, they were made out of, what do you call that, stamping. And so when you had your touch, when you're doing your A, right, but also when you did your nail, it made a noise, so, and then a visual, it's everything.
All right.
All their materials are made to connect with
That's cool.
all three, right?
It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like we think of using music to learn, like make something up, but I never thought about it. That's really cool.
And I always tell people, like, I ask people, like, hey, did you give your seller any feedback? Yes, I called them and gave them feedback. You always want to make sure that you're delivering some of your messages in written form also, and verbally, right? Because I think sometimes if you just send them an email, send them an email, like, they could read it, right? Like, sometimes if they're auditory, they're not gonna necessarily want to read, or potentially if they're one of your power people, they may not want your, so a lot of this is figuring how to deliver your message in a couple different ways. And again, like you said, Al, or whoever said, sometimes you got two people that are polar opposites.
Well,
I used
and
to love those cards where you record a message, remember those?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
It didn't work
Say-
well though a lot of times.
Yeah, but you could, like,
Or like
just a
the
short
story
thing,
book.
like, yay for you, we got it done, blah, 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 you open the card, we talked to you, so you saw it, and it talked to you. It's like, great.
Mhm. Where are they?
I don't know, maybe.
They're not at the dollar store.
No.
Yeah. It's like a $5 card, you got really rich,
Like a good intro to like NLP,
Oh, you.
this chapter.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Never happened.
And there were picture frames, stuff to buy.
I think
Mark,
that's what those storybooks are about,
Yeah.
you give kids, now where you, like, grandma reads the story,
Yeah.
and it records it in the book, and as they turn the page, they see, they hear.
It's cool.
Mari, you're saying a little into,
Yeah, it starts to get a little into NLP, and communicating a little bit deeper with people and kind of steering how you want them to go. I like this chapter. Linguistics program.
I'm just thinking in terms of the communication, someone said doing it effectively. So let us say, for example, there's doing business badly, we'll leave that aside, but then let's say there's good, better, and best. So it may function often on good, but if we're shooting for best, then we become students of this sort of stuff. I mean, this is like higher level communication. I mean, it's difficult to do this, and especially the next chapter, you throw that in here, the different types of, anyway.
yes,
It just is hard stuff. There's nothing intuitive about this. You have to be a student of this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and,
True.
and you have
In my
to,
opinion.
Mhm.
Agreed.
you have to, pick it up quickly while you're sitting with your clients. I mean, you don't have a lot of time to evaluate this and, you know, I guess it's really learning, we're all learning to sort of, okay, how are we gonna start picking up on all these cues right off the bat when everybody's a little nervous and you've gotta, like,
And I think some of the shift, at least in my mind, the shift now becomes, I've been so focused on my presentation, me, and now it's them. That I've got to listen for, right, like, in Michelle's point, like, to really take this from good, better, best. Get there, I've got to really be listening a lot better. But if I'm constantly thinking about what I'm about to say, I can't do that. And now I've almost got to like, you know, like push this stuff to the side and get better at listening first. Because it doesn't matter how good I'm realizing it doesn't matter how great my presentation is, it's falling flat because I'm not presenting. It doesn't matter what content's in it. It's just not, it's not hitting them.
Yeah, I think the super important part about this chapter is like really the undertone of it is scripting and dialogue, right? Like, you know, you look at scripts and you say like all the real good stuff happens like in the white space, right? And it's just knowing those questions and again, talking a little NLP, just being able to pick up those nuances that they're giving you, like the nonverbal cues that they're telling you are really important.
What I find to be a huge aha for me about these chapters here are, you know, yeah, it's important, we want to be effective to win a presentation, to get to yes, to sell your house. But I think what's also very important too is to be able to communicate effectively. Is if you don't connect with them well, like they say, you have 2 minutes to connect. After 2 minutes, you lose them, they don't listen to you, they're not paying attention to you. What's very important is that if you lose your client, you could really, they could be negatively affected to where you can't protect them. Or if there's something very important, you communicate with them during a transaction that can go sideways. And you may have explained everything to them clearly, but if you didn't communicate clearly enough to them or effective enough to them to where they retain what you're really saying, you know, you can prevent a lot of really big catastrophic failures in a transaction. You know, it can avoid a lot of these, well, you didn't tell me this, or you didn't tell me that. Yeah, I did, you just weren't listening. And then you're blaming them, and really, it's not them, it's us.
Or you don't say that though, right?
You fail. Yeah, we're the ones that fail to connect with them, so they can.
Matching and mirroring your customer, voice, body position, gestures, right?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Going from big picture to small picture, you know, that's a big aha for me. Maintaining our non-anxious presence.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's really good. It's very, high, like becoming an authentic professional instead of, which makes me feel a lot less nervous than being like a salesy person that's a big turn off, like at a car place, right? Because it's teaching me, like in teaching, my presence, my energy would be about protecting my student and who I'm talking to, making sure they feel comfortable and working on that. In this, I'm thinking too much about like what I need to do. And I think if I can start to change that, I think it would be very effective. Yeah, to do that. I can see that.
yeah, what's it say, the person with the lowest need has the highest power.
Yeah, I love that power need dynamic. I'll tell you, like with, I do a lot of business in the Hispanic community, right? And a lot of those consumers have a lesser understanding of how the transaction works. And a lot of the times they look at you and they're like, well, you're just trying to sell me any house, doesn't matter. And so like a lot of the times I have to tell them like, look, man, I need this transaction. If you don't want to buy this house, like you don't have to buy this house. And whenever I position that to them, it almost makes them back off of that defensive. And I think that really nails the head on that. You know, they really think that I'm just trying to sell them anything to put them in whatever. And that was a big line in this chapter.
Yeah, we talked about that, like the takeaway, sometimes you've gotta, there's opportunities with your buyer that you take where you give them those examples of where you're gonna take the others, in the sense, you're not gonna push this sale, because you really don't think it's right, so you almost make a good example of that. All right, and then the last one, practice the 3 rules of communication, showing better than telling, asking better than telling, and it matters who says it. All right, anything else on that? All right, 42, helping customers make good decisions.
I did like that, the showing buyers more than 5 homes,
Me too.
you know.
Yeah.
And I've tried to, you know, back in the day when there was more than 5 to show, you know, have definitely had that conversation, like at a certain point, it's all just gonna blur together and you're not gonna remember,
Mhm.
you know, one house from the next.
Yeah.
You know, trying to always condense that into something a little more manageable, not just because of the time you're putting in the car, but simply because just at that, yeah.
Yeah.
They all start to look, I mean, I think about, there's a park in Easton that I helped, we built years and years ago when the kids were little, and all the kids in the community had made these tiles, and, the tiles are falling apart, so I went to try and find the boys' tiles a few weeks ago to take a picture of them before they take them down. And the more I looked, like, they all just look the same. And I think that's with houses too, you know, they all just start to blend together. And my brother's like, well, we can stay and look longer, and I'm like, at this point, all I see is one big thing, like, I'm not even seeing the individual tiles anymore. I think that's sort of the same as this, like, beyond a few, they're all just blending together as one.
It's the Costco method. I saw this documentary on Costco and they said that their science is, you see that? To present they always have the Kirkland brand and then 2 other, they never do more, I don't think, they said in the video, because people can choose between those 2. If you give them multiple choices, they almost always walk away.
Yeah.
I was
As an example, I brought to a lot of our past clients, where, have you ever been to Cheesecake Factory?
Yeah.
Oh, it's 2
Oh,
So
How long does it take you
true.
to make
Their
a
menu is
decision
weird.
on what to eat?
500 pages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How long
And
does it
you
take
know,
to
only
make a decision?
20% of that menu ever gets ordered.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Annoying,
That's
yeah.
me. I get the same thing every time we go there. I
It's
spend
the
30
Cheesecake
minutes.
Factory menu, and everyone's like, oh.
It's true.
It is true.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
I think everything in life has become too many.
I used to tell stories of my wife, you know, with all due respect. My wife, whenever we go out.
It's never good. when it starts to-
Oh, God. Oh, God.
This is an unsanctioned comment.
Turn off the recording.
Hear me out, hear me out. It makes perfect sense. It's totally relevant.
Doesn't it always make perfect sense in all fairness?
To you, them, I know.
Sorry. So whenever my wife and I go out to dinner or go anywhere, it takes forever for her to get ready. And it's not because she just takes forever, it's because she goes into the closet and she's staring at all these outfits.
Oh, yes.
All these shoes, all these handbags, I can't make a decision.
Yeah.
But how I get her to move forward quickly is I'll go in there, I'll pick 3 outfits, 3 handbags, 3 pairs of shoes, lay in the bed and say, take your pick. And she can make a decision within 5 minutes. Versus-
All right, Miss
They just
Ridley
sit there,
Garcia.
Anymore.
But it works, but it works.
All right,
You
Alan.
must
All right,
trust- you
Alan.
must trust your judgment.
I want to hear your response to that.
Well, you know, stop by Lost on the way and I'll get.
Clearly.
Hey, never mind, you can go ahead and just.
And I think some of this comes from our angle too, because we feel responsible, right? I need to know the whole marketplace. I need to know all these things. I need to present value to them, so I'm gonna show them 20 things, right? Like, and I think it's kind of changing our mindset too. I'm thinking of the customer.
True.
Sellers, right? Same kind of formula. And I think this happens with, when we go over CMAs, right? Like I've had some people like, you know, like RPR, right? Like RPR puts together this like beautiful CMA that's 73 pages long, right? Like, you know, and we sometimes get lost in the, you know, gotta present this great information. And really, it sometimes boils down to 2 or 3 comps that are really the most
Right.
important ones. Or like he says, like, and I do this in that pricing spreadsheet, I try to find, like, I'll have a ton of columns, I narrow down the columns, and then I'll just focus on one column, right? Who has fixed up kitchens, right? Like, the ones with the highest price per square footage have a fixed up kitchen and fixed up baths. The ones with original kitchen, original baths are on the bottom of the list, right? We don't have, unless you guys want to do the kitchen and the bath, we're gonna have to price it on the lower end, right? And just really boil it all down into like really 1 or 2 columns. All right, anything else on this chapter? And this is just some practical stuff, but like when it's in writing, sometimes it's like, huh, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Now I
'cause
believe
think
it.
we do all have decision fatigue, just day-to-day living. And if we can sort of help to eliminate that in the process, because there are gonna be some much more important decisions for them to make, we can eliminate some of the unnecessary ones.
Yeah, and I think even for our sake, as the practitioner, most of us are solopreneurs. We don't have a boss over us who is like doing, you know, weekly analysis on our sales presentations. So we're sometimes left responsible for guiding our sales, and sometimes we're unfair to ourselves, good and bad, right? We don't give ourselves that fair assessment of how we're doing. So I do think something like this helps kind of realign us into where we should be. And you may not agree with all of it, but I think there are some points in throughout this book that's like, okay, like I probably, this is almost like my review. Like I probably just need to move over here and do it a little differently. All right, conclusion, Ninja Path. Anything on this one? You guys realize the rocks and butterfly kind of analogy? I was like, that's the weirdest logo.
True.
Now I get it, right? And again, I think some of this is, the hard part about this is, it is a transformation. It's gonna take time, right? And there are so many opportunities that we get presented with that are shortcuts. And I think the problem that a lot of us run into is that we're looking for that other opportunity, and then we find out that it either was short-lived, right? And maybe you took a technological advantage for a second, and now it's gone. Now you're like starting back over, right? And you're constantly kind of, you know, starting over when like the 1 year, 10 times in the business, as opposed to 10 years in the business kind of thing.
I had a huge on this one, where he was talking about drop his kids off at school and said, what are your 2 goals today? I said, be awesome, help somebody. And when he picked his kids up, one of his kids said, well, you only need to do one of them. If you help somebody, you're also awesome. And it makes perfect sense. Like when you're helping your client, you can totally consolidate a lot of your goals by just taking care of your client and just really, and just genuinely, you know, look out for their best interest and work for them. If you do that, you're gonna hit all your goals naturally. You're gonna get referrals. Everything's just gonna, like, all the planets in the universe is just gonna like align perfect for you just by simply just taking care of your client.
Or scheduling a vacation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why you get the
Getting
most
the
fun.
fun.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, so next week, we're gonna be doing next week on Thursday, which is Halloween too. I'll give you guys an option. So when I originally broke this book out, I was like, okay, the appendices should be like quick charts, graphs. It's not. It is actually it's basically kind of two parts. It's the buyer process and the seller process. Do you want to break it up into 2 weeks? Do you want to just stick with 1 week?
Two.
Two?
Because I felt a lot of this was
Me
geared towards
too.
buyers. That's my take on this.
What did you want to do with the meetings?
What's that?
What did you want to do with the meetings? Same type of format? Moving forward.
With,
If you do buyer process, would that be a lot of role play? Then we need more time. What are you talking about?
yeah, more of just, instead of trying to jam in the rest of this into 1 week of reading and kind of digesting, is that we break it up into appendices A through, and I think it's like D. And then 2 weeks from then, because I'm out of town that next week, we do the seller part. Is that
Yeah,
everyone vibing
I'll
with
go
that?
for 2 weeks.
But you said Thursday? You said Thursday?
Yeah, we're gonna be Thursday, the 31st.
When the first,
Yeah.
Wednesday.
Okay.
Thursday.
It's 31st. Yeah,
31st.
Before the Halloween party.
yeah, we're doing, yeah,
What?
Yeah.
yeah,
oh my.
yeah, so you gotta dress up too. Okay, so we're gonna do the buyer, the 10-step buyer process first, and then November 11th, we'll do the seller.
Awesome.
Make sense? Cool. All right, any other questions before we close out today?
So is there like a part 2 to this book, or is this it?
You go back to the beginning.
All right.
Yeah. So, yeah,
And the reason why I ask is because like I really enjoyed the book. I think it's been awesome, but it feels like that role play, whether your role play partner is just giving you all the right answers and there's no objections. And so like I'd love to see some of the objection handlers and some of like what happens when the ninja way isn't working.
Yeah.
Because everything was amazing.
yeah. So there's a thing called like Ninja Installation, which is the like in-person 3-day kind of full in immerse program for this. So if you want to look into doing that, there's some that they do locally, some are closed, some are open. And you know, if you all are interested, I didn't like, we looked at, we launch into something like this, I think it's like $1,100. And I was like, it's before anyone has a chance to see what it is, let's do the 25 option first. So yeah, that's probably the next step, unless you guys want to do some, we can keep doing some DIY stuff. There is like some podcasts that they've got.
Yeah, those are all online. I did a couple of those.
So I would assume they're coaching, right? I mean, they got a whole coaching system, is that correct?
Yeah, they do.
So that's their next movement that they want you to do. Well,
Yeah, it's not a heavy sell though, like in all honesty, like, you know, they do have some good, I think really the next step they do want you to do is the installation, right? Which is kind of their 3-day immersed, where you're doing this stuff and you are doing some more role play, some breakouts. Caroline's done it, I think, a couple times, so she probably, I keep referencing her, but she probably has some good insights into what it actually is, the value of it.
I think that you doing this Wednesday Wisdom book club and this makes it super immersive. Rather than just handing the book to say, hey, read this, I think us get together every Wednesday, it's totally taking this book to a completely different level.
Oh,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Joe.
Yeah, you're welcome. No, thank you guys, because it's made me read the book a lot slower too, which I've read this book twice now, before this, and I was like, I missed all of these little things, because now I'm like, kind of reading it for understanding, almost like listening. It's like, I don't know, it's like listening to my clients for understanding. It's like, gotta get to the next chapter, right? So yeah, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we're not done yet, so, okay, next week, Thursday, we'll do, and I'll send an email out, we'll do the buyer section.
Intersection.
Yeah, and then, Novotny Group, they're gonna be doing a Halloween party, right afterwards. All right, cool. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you all.